I said it while she was standing by the kitchen island, zipping up a white suitcase like we were discussing something as small as dinner plans. If you go to Miami with your ex, I'm done. Megan didn't even look up right away. She just kept pressing the zipper closed with both hands, calm as ever, like I was background noise in my own house. Then she gave me that little smile I had started seeing more often over the last year. Not warm, not loving, just thin, tired, dismissive. You're being dramatic, she said. It was a Thursday evening, just after 7. The sink still had 2 wine glasses from the night before. The air smelled like her perfume and the lemon cleaner she used when she wanted the house to feel orderly. Everything looked normal. That was the part that made it worse. The framed photos. The quiet hum of the refrigerator. The soft yellow light over the stove. My marriage was being split open in the middle of an ordinary kitchen. Megan, I said, more quietly this time. I'm not joking. She finally looked at me then. Blonde hair pinned back, travel clothes already on, phone face down beside her passport. She rolled her eyes like I was embarrassing her. It's Miami, not a honeymoon. With Daniel. It's a group trip. You told me yesterday it was just the two of you catching up. Her expression shifted for half a second, then hardened. So now you're tracking every word I say? I should have shouted. I should have asked her to sit down and say the truth out loud. Instead, I just stood there with my hands at my sides, feeling that cold pressure in my chest that comes right before a storm breaks. I had spent years being measured, dependable, impossible to provoke. I paid bills on time. I remembered birthdays. I stayed calm when she got cruel. Somewhere along the line, she had mistaken that for weakness. I mean it, I said. If you walk out that door and get on that plane with him, this marriage is over. She laughed. Actually laughed. Not loud. Just one sharp breath through her nose, like I was a man making threats he didn't have the nerve to keep. Then she picked up her suitcase. Don't wait up, she said. She grabbed her phone, her sunglasses, and walked past me without touching me. The front door opened. Warm evening air rushed in. Then it slammed shut behind her. I stood there listening to the silence she left behind. A minute later, her car started in the driveway. By the time the taillights disappeared, I already knew something she didn't. That had not been a warning. It had been the last one. I didn't chase her after she left. I didn't call. I didn't send the kind of text a man sends when he still believes the right words can pull someone back from the edge. I just stood in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the empty space where her suitcase had been. The house was too neat. Megan always cleaned before a trip, like wiping down counters could make what she was doing look less ugly. There was a bowl of fruit in the center of the island. Her coffee mug was still in the sink, lipstick on the rim. Small things. Domestic things. The kind that made betrayal feel almost surgical. The truth was, Miami hadn't started this. That trip was just the first time she stopped pretending I should have a say. For years, I had been the steady one. I handled the mortgage, the insurance, the broken appliances, the family dinners, the things that kept life from falling apart in visible ways. If Megan wanted something fixed, I fixed it. If there was a problem, I absorbed it. I thought that was what being a good husband looked like. Quiet competence, patience, restraint. At some point, she began to treat those things like they cost me nothing. She started interrupting me when I spoke, then correcting me in front of friends, then making decisions without asking, later informing me as if I were a roommate with shared expenses instead of her husband. Restaurants, trips, money, holidays, even whether people stayed in our home. I told myself marriage had seasons. I told myself stress changed people. I told myself not every vow needed to become a war. But disrespect has a rhythm when it settles into a house. It was in the way she checked her phone while I was talking. The way she sighed when I asked simple questions. The way I'll be late turned into I'm not coming home yet and then into no message at all. Every time I stayed calm, she looked a little less careful. Every time I chose peace, she pushed a little further. That was the part one understood too late. Megan didn't think I was patient. She thought I was harmless. In her mind, I was fixed furniture. The man who would still be there after every slight, every lie, every test. A dependable shape in the background. Useful. Predictable.
Permanent.
So when I told her, "If you go, I'm done," she heard it the same way she heard everything else from me near the end.
A sound.
Not a consequence. And standing there in that silent kitchen, with her taillights long gone and the refrigerator humming behind me, I realized something cold and clarifying. She hadn't just stopped loving me. She had stopped believing I could leave.
I didn't sit down.
I didn't pour a drink. I didn't stare at my phone waiting for a message that wasn't coming. I walked upstairs. The bedroom still smelled like her perfume. The bed was made too perfectly, like a hotel room no one had slept in yet. Her closet door was half open, rows of dresses spaced evenly, heels lined up underneath, like nothing in that room had ever been rushed or careless. I stepped past it and went straight to my office. Closed the door. Locked it. For a few seconds, I just stood there listening. The house was completely quiet now. No footsteps. No voice. No movement. Just the faint ticking of the wall clock and the low hum of the computer in sleep mode. This was the part she never saw. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a thin black folder. No labels. No markings. Just something that looked like paperwork you forget exists until you need it. Except I hadn't forgotten. I'd built it. Months ago. The first time Megan came home at 2 in the morning and told me, without looking at me, I lost track of time. Something shifted. Not anger. Not panic. Just clarity. A quiet realization that I was no longer reacting to a bad phase. I was watching a pattern settle into place. That night, while she slept, I sat in this same chair and started preparing. Not loudly. Not dramatically.
Carefully.
I woke the computer, entered a password she didn't know existed, and opened a series of files.
Dates.
Accounts. Agreements. Notes written in a tone so neutral, they almost looked detached from my own life. I had separated things slowly, redirected certain payments, consolidated others, spoke to people she had never met, using hours of the day she assumed I was at work or running errands. Every step small enough to look like routine, but deliberate enough to build something solid underneath the surface. An exit. Not emotional. Structural. I sat down and scrolled through the documents, reviewing them like I had done dozens of times before. Everything was in place.
Clean. Quiet.
Waiting. The only thing missing had been a trigger. A clear moment where the line wasn't blurred or arguable. Something undeniable. I glanced at the time. Her flight would be boarding soon. For a brief second, I pictured her at the airport, scrolling through her phone, maybe messaging him, maybe smiling, completely certain that whatever line she had crossed, I would still be exactly where she left me when she got back. I closed the image out of my mind. Then I reached for my phone. No hesitation this time. No second thoughts. I made the first call. "Hi," I said when the line connected, voice steady. "It's time. Let's proceed." On the other end, there was no surprise. Just a calm reply. "Understood." I ended the call, set the phone down, and opened the next document. Megan thought she had just left for a trip. What she didn't know was that the moment her plane lifted off the ground, so did everything that had been holding her life in place. The first document I opened was anew. That was the part that mattered most. It was dated 3 years back, signed on a quiet Sunday afternoon at our dining table. Megan had been in a loose gray sweater, hair tied up, barely reading the pages as she flipped through them. I remembered the sound of the pen more than anything else. Soft, repetitive, careless. "What is this again?" she had asked. "Just restructuring some assets," I said. "Cleaner for taxes." She nodded, signed where I pointed, and went back to her phone. At the time, it had looked like routine paperwork. Tonight, it became something else. I scrolled slowly, reviewing each clause with the same calm focus I used when I first built it. The structure was simple on the surface. Joint holdings shifted into a layered framework, managed through a separate entity she had technically approved but never questioned. Control without noise. Ownership without visibility. I checked the timestamps. Then the confirmations. Then the authorization email that had come through minutes earlier after my call. Everything had already started moving. Accounts began updating in real time. Access permissions changed. Linked assets disconnected and reattached under the structure she didn't understand and had never bothered to ask about. It didn't look aggressive. That was the design. It looked administrative, necessary, final. I leaned back slightly, watching the screen as numbers and labels adjusted themselves into their new positions. Years of work, condensed into quiet changes that didn't require confrontation or permission anymore. No arguments. No raised voices. Just execution. My phone buzzed once beside the keyboard. A message. Initial transfers complete. Remaining items in progress. I read it once, then locked the screen. Somewhere above the Atlantic, Megan was probably ordering a drink, maybe texting him, maybe posting something casual to make the trip look harmless. From her perspective, nothing had changed. The same accounts, the same house, the same man waiting where she left him. But systems don't need announcements. They just shift. I opened one final document. The clause most people skipped because it looked like fine print. Dense language. Legal tone. Easy to ignore if you trusted the person sitting across from you. Megan had trusted me. Or more accurately, she hadn't thought she needed to pay attention. I approved the last step. A small confirmation window appeared. I didn't rush it. I read it once more, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to feel the weight of it fully land. Then I clicked.
Done.
No sound. No dramatic moment. Just a quiet completion that erased her from structures she didn't even realize held her life together. I closed the laptop halfway and sat there in the dim light of the office. For the first time that night, I allowed myself a single thought, clear and steady. She didn't break the marriage when she got on that plane. She just activated the part where I stopped protecting her from the consequences. By the time her plane was halfway to Miami, the house was no longer hers.
It didn't happen loudly.
No moving trucks. No chaos. Just a scheduled arrival at 10:30 a.m., right on time, like everything else that day. I was already downstairs when the doorbell rang. I opened it before the second chime. Linda stood there with a single suitcase and a leather folder tucked under her arm. Mid-40s, composed, the kind of presence that didn't need to announce itself to take up space. She wore a navy coat despite the mild weather, heels that clicked once as she stepped inside, then went quiet on the hardwood. "You must be Daniel," she said. I nodded. "Come in." No small talk. No awkwardness. She walked in like someone who had already decided she belonged there. I respected that. We moved into the living room. Sunlight cut across the floor, catching the edge of the coffee table Megan had picked out 2 years ago. Linda set her folder down, opened it, and slid a document toward me. "Lease agreement," she said. "As discussed." I skimmed it not because I needed to, but because details matter.
Names. Dates.
Terms. Everything aligned perfectly with what had already been put in motion. "Everything is in order," I said. She gave a small nod. "Good." I signed.
So did she.
It was clean, legal, immediate. Linda wasn't a guest. She was now a registered tenant of the property. Full rights of occupancy. Protected.
Documented. Filed.
Megan's name, on the other hand, no longer held the weight it used to. "Where would you like your things?" I asked. "Master bedroom," she said, without hesitation. "Of course." I led her upstairs. The hallway felt different already. Same walls. Same photos. But something in the air had shifted, like the house itself had decided to stop pretending. We stepped into the bedroom Megan had left just hours earlier. Linda paused for a moment, taking it in. The neatly made bed. The closet. The subtle traces of another woman still lingering in the space. Then she set her suitcase down at the foot of the bed. "I'll need this cleared," she said calmly. I nodded once. No problem. No anger. No rush. Just process. I walked to Megan's closet, opened it fully, and looked at everything inside. Dresses, shoes, handbags. Pieces of a life she assumed would still be waiting for her exactly as she left it. For a second, I let the silence stretch. Then I reached for the first hanger.
Carefully.
Methodically. One by one, I began taking her things down. Not thrown. Not damaged. Just removed. Behind me, Linda had already started opening drawers, organizing space that wasn't hers this morning, but legally was now. By the time I carried the first set of boxes downstairs, the house had already begun to forget Megan. And upstairs, in the room she thought she still owned, someone else was unpacking. Megan started posting before the plane even landed. First it was the usual, window seat, wing against the clouds, a caption about finally getting away. Nothing unusual. Nothing that would raise questions for anyone who didn't know what she had just walked out on. I didn't react. I just watched. By the time she checked into the hotel, the post shifted. Bright water, white sand, a glass with something clear and expensive catching the sunlight just right. Everything framed carefully, like she had something to prove without saying it directly. I sat at the dining table that evening, my laptop open, her profile on the screen, and went through each photo slowly. Details matter. The first thing I noticed wasn't her. It was the room. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Ocean view. Clean, minimal furniture that didn't belong to standard bookings. I'd stayed in Miami before. That wasn't a casual setup. That was money. Intentional money. The second thing was the timing. She had told me it was a short trip. A quick catch-up. But the tags, the locations, the pacing of her posts, it didn't line up with anything temporary. It looked planned, structured, like something arranged well in advance.
Then I saw it.
Third photo. Slight angle. Megan by the balcony, hair loose, wearing a white dress I had never seen before. In the reflection of the glass behind her, there was someone else. Not Daniel.
I zoomed in. Blurry.
Partial. Just a shoulder and part of a watch catching light. But it wasn't him. Wrong build. Wrong posture. And Daniel didn't wear watches like that. He never cared about details like that. I leaned back slightly, eyes still on the screen. So this wasn't just a reunion. I kept scrolling. More photos. Different angles. Different times of day. And in two of them, barely visible unless you were looking for it, that same presence appeared again. A reflection. A shadow. A movement just outside the frame.
Consistent.
Deliberate. Hidden but not well enough. I checked the captions again.
Light. Carefree.
Almost careless in tone. That was the mistake. People who have nothing to hide don't overcurate what they show. I opened a separate tab and began noting timestamps, locations, visual details. Not guesses. Not assumptions. Just facts. Patterns. Because whatever Megan thought she was doing in Miami, it wasn't spontaneous. And it definitely wasn't just about her ex. I closed the laptop halfway and looked around the house. Quiet. Ordered. Different now. Upstairs, I could hear faint movement. Linda settling in, adjusting things, making the space hers without asking permission from anyone who used to live there. Everything here was already shifting. And in Miami, Megan was still performing a version of reality that no longer existed. She just didn't know yet that she wasn't hiding anything from me anymore. She was building evidence. She came back 3 days later, earlier than planned. That was the first sign something in Miami hadn't gone the way she expected. I knew her flight had landed an hour before she pulled into the driveway. I didn't wait by the window. I didn't stand at the door. I was in the kitchen, exactly where I had been the night she left, except everything around me felt settled. Finished. I heard her car door slam. Fast footsteps. Then the front door handle turned.
Once. Twice.
A pause. Then harder. The keypad beeped. Incorrect code. Again. Incorrect. Silence stretched for a few seconds, then I heard her knock. Not loud yet. Just controlled, like she still believed this was a minor inconvenience. I didn't move. Another knock. Sharper. Daniel? Her voice carried through the door, edged with irritation more than concern. Why isn't this working? She tried the handle again, then the keypad. The same sequence. The same result. I took a slow sip of water, set the glass down, and waited. The third knock wasn't a knock. It was a hit. Daniel, open the door. Still calm, but cracking. Footsteps approached from behind me. Linda. She didn't rush. She adjusted the sleeve of her blouse, walked to the door, and unlocked it with a quiet, deliberate motion. When the door opened, Megan froze. I could see her from where I stood. Travel bag over her shoulder. Sunglasses pushed up into her hair. That same white dress from the photos, now wrinkled from the flight. She looked like someone who expected to step back into a life that had been paused for her. Instead, she was looking at a stranger. Linda held the door just enough to block the entrance. "Yes," she said evenly. Megan blinked, confused for half a second, then frowned. "Who are you?" "A tenant," Linda replied. There was a silence that didn't make sense to Megan yet. She shifted her weight, trying to look past Linda into the house. "Where's Daniel?" That's when I stepped into view. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just enough. "I'm here." Her eyes snapped to me, relief flashing across her face for a fraction of a second, until she saw mine. No warmth. No hesitation. Just distance. "What is this?" she asked, her voice tightening. "Why can't I get in?" "You don't have access anymore," I said. She let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Stop. Seriously. My code isn't working. It's been changed. And my key? Useless." The words landed heavier than I expected them to, even to my own ears. Her expression shifted again. This time slower, confusion turning into something sharper. "Daniel," she said, lowering her voice. "Move." Linda didn't. Neither did I. For the first time since she got back, Megan looked unsure of where she was standing. Not physically, but in everything else. "Why is she in my house?" Megan asked. I shook my head once. "It's not your house." That was the moment it hit her. Not all at once, but enough. Her grip tightened on the strap of her bag. Her eyes moved from me, to Linda, to the space behind us that she couldn't reach anymore. And for the first time since I'd known her, Megan didn't look annoyed. She looked locked out. For a few seconds, no one moved. Megan stood on the porch, still holding her bag, like her body hadn't caught up to what her mind was starting to understand. The air between us felt tight, stretched thin. Then she laughed again, louder this time.
Sharp. Forced.
"Okay," she said, shaking her head. "Enough. This isn't funny." No one responded. Linda stayed exactly where she was, one hand on the door, calm, unmoved. I didn't step closer. I didn't soften. Megan's eyes flicked between us. "You made your point," she continued. "You're upset. I get it. Now move." I didn't. Her voice dropped, quieter now. "Daniel." Still nothing. That's when the shift happened. The irritation drained out of her face, replaced by something tighter. Her breathing changed, shorter, less controlled. She adjusted her grip on the bag again, like she needed something physical to hold on to. "What is this?" she asked, slower now. "What did you do?" "I followed through," I said. She stared at me, searching for something familiar in my face. Something she could push against, argue with, dismiss. There was nothing there for her to use. "You can't just lock me out," she said. "This is my house." It was. The word landed clean. Final. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out right away. For the first time, she looked past me into the house, not with ownership but with distance, like she was trying to reconnect to something that had already been cut off. "I live here," she said, softer now. "You lived here," I corrected. Her composure cracked. "Stop saying it like that," she snapped. "Stop. Just stop." She took a step forward. Linda didn't move, but the message was clear enough. Megan stopped just short of crossing the threshold. "Daniel," she said again, and this time there was something else in it. Not anger. Not control.
Fear.
"You're overreacting. It was just a trip. With him." It wasn't like that. I held her gaze. She broke eye contact first. That told me more than anything she could have said. Her voice dropped again, almost careful now.
"We can talk about this."
"Just let me inside." I shook my head.
"No."
That single word hit harder than anything else. Her shoulders dropped slightly, like something inside her had just lost balance. "Please," she said. The word didn't sound natural coming from her. Not controlled. Not calculated. Just exposed. I didn't respond. Behind me, The house was quiet, stable, unmoved by what was happening at the door. In front of me, Megan looked like someone realizing too late that the version of me she understood. The one who stayed, the one who absorbed, the one who forgave,
Was gone.
I didn't think you'd actually do it, she said, barely above a whisper. I nodded once. I know. And that was the moment it fully broke. Not loud, not dramatic, just the exact second she understood. I hadn't replaced her. I had removed her. After she chose to walk away. She didn't leave right away. That surprised me. I expected anger. A scene. Maybe even a threat. But Megan just stood there on the porch, like her body refused to accept she had nowhere to go. Eventually, she picked up her phone. I'm calling a lawyer, she said, but it didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like someone trying to grab onto structure. I nodded. You should. That seemed to shake her more than anything else. She stared at me for another second, then turned and walked back to her car. Slower this time. No confidence left in her steps. Just movement. The engine started. She sat there for a while before driving off. I closed the door. Quiet again. Upstairs, I returned to my office and opened the files I hadn't shown anyone. Not the financial structures. Not the property documents. The other ones. The ones I started collecting after the first time her stories stopped lining up. Emails. Transfers. Names. Patterns. At first, I thought it was just Daniel. An old relationship she couldn't let go of. Something emotional. Predictable. I was wrong. I pulled up a series of bank records I had flagged weeks ago. Small deposits at first. Irregular. Then larger ones. Structured carefully. Never obvious. Never reckless. Always from the same source. A consulting firm on paper. But when I traced it back further, it didn't hold. Shell layers. Redirected accounts. Clean on the surface, hollow underneath. And tied to it, a name. Married. Public-facing. The kind of man who appears stable until you look closely at how his money moves. Megan hadn't just been distant.
She'd been involved.
I leaned back, letting that settle. The Miami trip made more sense now. The hotel. The details. The third presence in the reflection. Not Daniel. Him. I opened one of the saved message threads. Short exchanges. Careful wording. No emotion. Just coordination.
Dates. Times.
Confirmations. And one line that stayed on the screen longer than the others. Payment will be handled the same way. No exposure. I read it twice. No exposure. That wasn't about a relationship. That was about risk. Megan hadn't just crossed a line in our marriage. She had stepped into something much bigger. Something that didn't fall apart with arguments or apologies. Something that collapsed when it was seen. My phone buzzed. A message from a contact I hadn't used in a while. I looked into the name he sent. You need to be careful. This connects to an ongoing investigation. I stared at the screen for a moment, then locked it. Downstairs, the house was still quiet, controlled, exactly how I intended it to be. But somewhere beyond it, Megan was driving away from a door that had already closed, and towards something she didn't fully understand yet. I wasn't going to stop it. This time, I was just going to let everything she built in the dark come into the light. The first call didn't come from Megan. It came from someone else. 3 days after she stood on that porch, my phone rang just after 8 a.m. I was at the dining table, the same place where I had been tracking everything she thought she was hiding. Mr. Carter? A calm voice asked. Yes. We'd like to ask you a few questions regarding a financial inquiry. Your name came up in connection with an account previously linked to your spouse. I leaned back slightly. Former spouse, I said. And I've been expecting her call. There was a brief pause on the other end. Then the tone shifted. More direct. More focused. I gave them what I had. Not everything at once. Just enough. Documents, timestamps, patterns. Clean. Organized. Impossible to dismiss as coincidence. I didn't protect her. Not anymore. By the end of that week, things started moving fast. Megan called. Dozens of times. I didn't answer. Then messages. Daniel, please, we need to talk. This isn't what you think. They're asking me questions. I don't understand what's happening. I read every message.
I didn't respond.
2 weeks later, her name stopped appearing in places it used to. Accounts frozen. Access restricted. The quiet unraveling of someone who had relied on things she didn't fully understand. Daniel disappeared from the picture entirely. The other man didn't. His name started showing up where it shouldn't. Investigations. Financial flags. Quiet articles that didn't make headlines but carried weight in the right circles. And Megan. She got pulled into it. Not as a victim.
As someone involved.
The divorce finalized without resistance. There was nothing left for her to claim, and for the first time, she didn't try to argue that point. The last message she sent was short. I didn't think you'd go this far. I looked at it for a long time before locking my phone. Then I deleted it. Months passed. The house changed again, but this time slowly. Intentionally. No sudden shifts. No quiet removals. Just a different kind of life settling into place. Linda moved out eventually. No complications. No noise. Just the end of a role she had fulfilled exactly as agreed. And after that, things stayed calm. I met someone later. Not quickly. Not as a reaction. Just naturally. Someone who asked questions. Who listened to answers. Who didn't assume permanence without earning it. No tension. No tests. Just clarity. One evening, I stood in the kitchen again. The same soft light over the stove, the same quiet hum in the background. But it felt different now. Stable in a way that didn't require effort. I poured a glass of water, leaned against the counter, and let the silence settle. Megan had thought I was predictable, that I would stay, that consequences were something other people dealt with. She was wrong, not because I wanted revenge, but because when the line was crossed, I didn't argue. I didn't chase. I didn't break. I just closed the door and never opened it again.